Upon hearing a strange sound, the first reaction is to stay still. Then, common sense advises any animal to take a step back. It has entered forbidden territory, the safety distance from a rattlesnake. The snake doesn't want to harm anyone, but it doesn't like having anyone so close. It's scared, which is why it gives fair warning. The rattle is a good discouraging alarm. These snakes scare predators with it, and in general, any species that comes too close. The combination of tone, rhythm, and volume in some sounds is able to catch one's attention, as a rattle catches a baby's attention. But these sounds can seriously alter the state of mind of anyone who listens to them. Alarms make all of us nervous. They're repeated sounds with the right frequency, and the genes of all living beings able to hear react in the same way. They stimulate the production of hormones that make us highly alert. When we talk about rattlesnakes, we normally talk about their venom and about how dangerous they are. Fear doesn't allow us to see beyond that, and the most surprising fact about these snakes, what's truly incredible, is how this reptile has been able to develop its extraordinary rattle, a unique device among living beings. Certain ophidians, ones even more primitive than the rattlesnake, also move their tails when they feel threatened or aroused, and on certain soils they also produce noise, although it's no more than a whisper. Some authors contend that with these movements they're offering bait, something similar to an earthworm, to their small prey. Perhaps it's only a means of diversion, something that's produced to calm the nerves of anything that makes them uncomfortable. And they can do this quickly or slowly. In a certain way, both theories would help to explain how the complex muscular system developed that these snakes have created to move their tails. But what about the rattle? How did it evolve? It seems to be made of skin left over from successive sheddings, accumulated over the animal's most recent scales. A horny point that is used as the base of the instrument. But how would this accumulation of skin be used initially when it didn't emit sound? And why would it end up moving in such a dizzying way? It's still a mystery. Many animals produce sounds, but there are very few species, however, that have evolved to use sound as a defense mechanism. They're interesting exceptions. Like these small marsupials, sugar gliders are very unsociable beings. They live in a strictly familial setting, with their partner and yearly offspring at most. They're unlikely to welcome just anyone into their home. Their nest is a hole made in a tree, lined with plant material to make it more comfortable. If they're bothered by a predator, or in this case by one of their own kind in search of shelter, their reaction is quite overwhelming. Such a resounding reception makes it clear that this place is already occupied and that visitors are not welcome. The sound that the sugar gliders make is disproportionate to their size. That's their aim, to make anyone who hears the sound believe that it's coming from a big animal. Furthermore, the hollowed-out tree acts as a sound box. Just like the sound of a guitar is amplified before emerging through its hole. Sugar gliders are not normally attacked when they're in their shelters, since they're quite convincing. The sound of birds singing is constant in almost any ecosystem and during almost any season of the year. But the sweet song of birds can suddenly turn into a high-pitched alarm. An angered mother can shout at certain undesired visitors. Some birds could rightly defend their claim to the patent for the acoustic alarm. A whistle by surprise gives a good fright and is an unbeatable way to ask the neighbors for help. South American orioles live in communities and build their nests in groups. Possibly no one except the orioles themselves realizes how useful it is to have a neighborhood ready to help upon the first sign of alert. Their basket-shaped nests, which reach almost 2.5 meters in length, are a fantastic defense against those enemies that can walk on branches. In addition, not all the nests have eggs, since some are built as decoys. The songs of these beautiful birds are now the songs of courtship. In this strange way, two male birds are claiming their right to mate with the females that form part of the community. Some fortunate females enter their nests to lay their eggs. Others are watching to see if the baby chicks they're expecting have hatched. The Oriole breeding cooperative is in its busiest period. And this is also the time in which they have to be very alert in order to avoid being attacked by an enemy. Who could we ask about it? The Oriole defense system is perfect. Logically, another bird. And it's not exactly an egg robber. The cowbird is a specialist in getting around the defensive wall that the orioles have created. But it doesn't attack it. The only thing it's looking for is to take advantage of it, to safely lay its own eggs inside these maximum security baskets. To reveal the presence of the intruder, the oriole shouts, which is now an alarm, and tries to expel the stranger. But once again, the cowbird has achieved its goal, and its descendants will grow unharmed and protected by the oriole's system. But the parents of other birds, most in fact, can't always remain near the nest, although they don't like to leave their offspring alone very often. The hoopoes spend most of their time in search of resources to maintain their families. And that's why some chicks have to develop their own protection system. The hoopoes' nests are usually found in holes in trees, or in a stone wall, as in this case. Big predators can't reach them. Furthermore, the hoopoe's nest smells very bad, really bad. But a snake is a terrible enemy. They slip in anywhere, and the bad smell may actually help them locate the nest. The hoopoe chicks, however, have created an anti-predator protection system, a defense system based on surprise. By expelling their feces forcefully and well aimed at the face of their enemy, they're able to confuse him, scare him, and send him off with the smelly memory that reminds him for days that the hoopoe nests are not a good choice. Surprise has a strong effect. It causes fear. But being afraid, even being a coward, is not looked down upon in nature. It is, in fact, an essential instinct for survival. A very different alarm system has been created by certain acacias. And we're not referring to thorns. Of course, a barbed wire fence is a forceful protection system, and more so when the barb measures almost 10 centimeters. But the tongue and the digestive system of giraffes and certain other herbivores are able to handle those spikes quite well. The proof is that this herd is having a real feast. But this feast is a race against the clock. The acacias are going to trigger an exceptional alarm system among living beings. All plants have some kind of poison, especially in the form of tannin, and the taste of these compounds is usually very bitter. It announces the presence of harmful toxic substances to whoever is chewing the leaves. But the acacias have gone one step further to protect themselves. In the face of a strong attack, they communicate among themselves through a silent alarm system. These secret codes supply the system, and the plant massively increases its poison production. When the leaves are cut or bitten, chemical substances are given off, which the air spreads around quickly. The message is received by the plant being attacked and by the entire neighborhood. The more serious the attack is, the more tannin that is produced. Each individual tree elevates the concentration of poison within it by several degrees, and it's just a matter of minutes before the small forest reaches a high degree of toxicity. The herbivores then perceive the highly bitter taste in their mouths, and they feel forced to leave the area. When the robbers are aware that their booty is a trap, and that the entire neighborhood has been warned, they're only left with one option: to get out. From personal experience, defenseless plant lice know how useful a bodyguard is. That's why they pay highly for this service. By providing the ants with a very nutritious sugary liquid, in return they obtain the security of having bodyguards and escorts at their disposal. At the slightest sign of danger, the ants will react like a man defending his protégé. But only due to self-interest, of course. Ants are mercenaries. The sense of duty is man's prerogative. Ants have become such a well-organized allied army that some plants have decided to hire their services so that they're not devoured by insects, as well as to avoid being invaded by more aggressive plants. This type of acacia in Costa Rica is known as the cornizuelo, or bullhorn acacia. It's evolved parallel to a species of ants. It's one of the best symbiotic relationships known today. In return for their protection, the plant provides its bodyguards with room and board. Its strong thorns are hollow, which is where the ants live. They also use the thorns to store their food and to breed their offspring, and they use them as their bedrooms. It's an atypical anthill, in which the different sections are independent rooms connected not by tunnels, but by the tree's branches. This immense labyrinth is conveniently marked by pheromones, in a way that each ant can recognize its path and go where its work takes it. The tree thorns are also a good defense, which means that the ants are also protected by their client. You watch my back, and I'll watch yours, as the saying goes. But the ants live on the acacia especially for their payment, or better yet, the food. The tree secretes a liquid for the ants. These tiny springs are equally distributed among the branches. The ants can drink from them to obtain the calories they need to survive. The care offered by the acacia is such that the ants do not need to look for any other resources. They never leave the tree. In certain periods, the plant produces a kind of pill rich in proteins at the tip of the leaves, which completes the nutritional needs of the entire colony, including the queen and the larvae. These prepared food packs are very similar to the modern energy bars eaten by humans, which include an adequate proportion of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The question is that the guardian who protects the tree doesn't leave his post, not even to eat. What happens is that anyone who dares to approach the acacia is dangerously attacked because this species of ant also has a very strong poison. Surprisingly, we discovered a worm peacefully strolling among the ants. Even in the middle of this fury caused by another insect, they didn't seem to notice it. The ants didn't detect the worm, and if they came into contact with it, they quickly became immobilized. Its protective shield must be like a chemical costume, but this kind of invention is not within a human being's reach. Most human security services include security cameras. Having visual control of the surrounding area is the key to reliable protection, which is why this shrimp of the Alpheus genus hires its goby. The crustacean can't see on its own. Its eyes are too small, they're not functional. But without a doubt, this leaves room in its brain for other more necessary functions for life. But even though it can't see, it's not easy prey. It solved the problem by searching for protection that completely covers its needs. The fish acts as its guide. The habits of this shrimp don't include frequently moving around and being exposed to the dangers of the reef. And if it weren't absolutely necessary, it would never leave its home. The ownership of the home belongs to the shrimp. In fact, the shrimp builds the galleries that make up its shelter, and if the sea current destroys it, it's also in charge of rebuilding the home. It's well prepared for this. The nearby goby passively watches the construction of the home. Its contract clearly establishes what's expected of it, and working with its hands is not included. Once the home is finished, both species enjoy it. The shrimp always keeps its long antennae in contact with the fish in such a way that if the fish detects a threat, it alerts its shrimp companion. When the goby goes out in search of food, the shrimp takes refuge in the deepest part of the cave, and only when the eyes of the goby have retaken the lookout position does the shrimp come out to enjoy the remains of the food that the goby has brought. We were able to verify the success of this method. When a predator like this grouper attacks, no one is taken by surprise, and once hidden in the twists and turns of the small cave, they're safe. As safe as this young animal. One of the services that require a high security protection system is the transportation of valuable merchandise. and there's nothing more valuable than one's own genes. That's why many parents opt for transporting their children close to their bodies during their infancy. The differences in transportation techniques stem from the number of offspring that each species has and how much time each parent has to dedicate to this tiring job. Something that not all the little ones accept readily. Certain spiders have more than 500 descendants in only one generation. And they're able to transport all of them together on their stomach. But of course, only for a few days. In other families, the organization is somewhat more complicated. Walking in formation can be a very practical option. But there's another method of transportation and defense. A perfect method. The bad thing is, it's impossible to imitate. The system of these fishes is without a doubt the best example of transportation, care, and security services for young fish. The mate has chosen and defended a hiding place among the rocks in order to carry out its complex reproduction. The fertilized eggs have been stored in the male's mouth during the entire incubation period, which lasts 25 days. This forces him to undergo a long and forced fast. But at last the time has arrived. The babies have been born, and the patient father knows that he can let them out. This is their first excursion in the outside world and is also a relief for everyone involved. The 153 small fish can finally move comfortably. The inside of their father's mouth must have looked like the metro in Tokyo during rush hour. But the adult is also very thankful. He's going to enjoy his first meal in a very long time. And now he can breathe deeply without fear of swallowing anyone. However, his task has only just begun. The young fish are also hungry, and they need to be fed and taught what to eat. This means stirring up the sandy bottom continuously in order to make the minuscule edible particles buried in the sand accessible to the little ones. From now on, the female will collaborate in raising the small fish and will alternate with her mate when they need to protect their babies between their cheeks. They'll only do this every once in a while, especially since their offspring are a delicious snack for other fishes that live in the surrounding area. A certain distance must be kept. It's interesting when a fight separates the parents too far from their children. The children stick close to the riverbed in order to avoid being seen. Although it's an occasional defense mechanism, the security offered by the jaws of their mother or father is much better. Protect, feed, and teach, hour after hour, day after day, until the children become independent and leave home, with the luck of having sufficient defense mechanisms so that someday they can start the whole process all over again.